अस्सलाम वालेकुम। मेरी आवाज़ आ रही है क्लियर? ठीक है, जज़ाकल्लाह। ओके, present now, entire screen. Acha, today's topics are slightly diverse. The first topic which we need to do is the arrays. Arrays is, and then we need to do these two things which are really important. So unless we do these things, do not leave the class. Okay, so first topic is arrays, and arrays are basically a simplest form of a data structure, and essentially it's a sequence of objects which have the same type, and the objects are called the elements of the array. I'm reading it from the screen, and are numbered consecutively from 0, 1, 2, 3. Now if you are doing C or C++, the array numbering or the array index number always goes from 0 to the size of array minus 1. So let's say if I have an array of size 10, I'm going to explain what I mean by size 10. um, that means that the index number will go from 0 to 9. Okay, so if I have an array of size 5, that means it can store 5 elements in it. It's a kind of a data structure. It can store 5 elements. The index number will go from 0 to 4, always size minus 1. If you are doing MATLAB or any other software, you have to keep in mind that in some software, the array index numbers go from 1 to the size. So if in MATLAB, if you are uh, using an array of size 10, the index numbers will go from 1 to 10. Okay, but in C or C++, the index number will go from 0 to size minus 1, or should we say n minus 1. Okay, so the term subscript is used because it's a mathematical sequence. An array would be written with the subscripts a subscript 0, a subscript 1, and a subscript 2. And these subscripts locate the element's position within the array, which so that we can access the elements of the array directly. Now, how can we initialize an array? First, we need to have its name. You can name it just like you would name any other variable, but the most important thing for an array is the square brackets. Whenever you are declaring an array, you have to use the square brackets, and these square brackets can contain a number, and these square brackets sometimes do not contain a number. For example, if I've declared an array, the name of the array is a, the type of that array is float. That means this array can store floating point numbers. Or how many numbers? Now if I've initialized the array using the equals to sign and assigning these values to this array, I have declared initialized three values: 22.2, 44.4, and 66.6. So that means the size of this array is going to be 3, and the index number will go from 0, 1, 2. Okay, so 0 to 2. So the first element of the array would be accessed as, this is all just comments really. So the first element of this array would be accessed as a0. The second element would be accessed as a1, and the third element would be accessed as a2. So the individual elements of the array do not have a name. Only the whole array itself has a name, such as here I've named the array as a, and this array can only store one type of variable, one type of value actually. So this array a can store floating point numbers, and this array b can also store floating point numbers. I could have written here as double. So that would have that would have changed the type of this array to double, and this means that the array b would now be able to store 7 double precision floating point values. But I have only given in this statement, I have only given three values: 55.5, 66.6, and 77.7. But I've declared the size of this array to be 7. So that means that from B0, I mean, this is a comment really. So B0 would have the value of 55.5, B1 would have the value of 66.6, and B2 would have the value of 77.7. Now the remaining elements of the array, B3, B4, B5, and B6, because the index element always goes from 0 to size minus 1. So here the array B has a size 7. That means it can store 7 double precision floating point numbers. The index number will go from 0 to 6. So 0, 1, 2 are occupied by 55.5, 66.6, and 77.7. But the rest of the array, the B3, B4, B5, and B6, would now be containing zero values. 0 0.0 for B3. B3 would contain 0 0.0, B4 would also contain 0 0.0, B5, B6 would also contain 0 0.0. But we need to watch out that in C and C++ language, there are no implicit checks. If you go beyond the size of the array, or if you type in the index number which is not legal. For example, if I'm going to this array B of size 7, the valid index value will go from B0 to B 6, because 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the quantity of these elements would be 7. But if someone, or if I uh, assign the value B7, assign a value to B7, or if I assign a value to B70, this is not a compile time error. Okay, I mean, it is possible that you won't receive an error, even though that is an illegal thing to do, or it is possible that your operating system might be throwing up an error saying that you are going to access the memory location which is not allocated to you. So it is possible you might get an error. It is also possible that you might not get an error. So you have to keep in mind, you have to watch out that whatever programming or whatever code you're writing, the array index should remain within the bounds of the array, so that, I mean, you do not access any illegal memory areas. Okay, because in MATLAB or in other softwares, in Java and Python, I think there are obviously there are checks to restrict the programmer so that he or she cannot access beyond the allocated memory space. But in C or C++ language, once you have declared the array using the index number, you can access even the memory locations which are not allocated to you. So that is actually an error, but this is not a compile time error. This might not be a runtime error. It might be possible that the operating system will crash your program, and then it's saying that. I'm going to demonstrate that in a moment. So I hope that is slightly understood by the all the students. So let's go to example number 1, which is, I mean, I've just written a simple program, include IOStream using namespace standard integer main void, and this is return 0, which is the basic structure of all our C++ programs. Now I have declared an array double A3. The name of the array is A. The type of the array is double. That means it can store floating point numbers, but each floating point number would be of, I think, 8 or 10 bytes, not so sure, but obviously it has more precision than simple float. And the size of the array, once look, this is important, that here we are using the square brackets to signify that we are indeed uh, declaring an array, and the size of the array is defined here as 3. So the valid index number will go from 0, 1, and 2. So it will not go to 3, it will not go to 4, because that is an illegal index number. And using these index number, we can access the elements of the array directly. So if I can draw this, let's see if I can draw here. So this thing, if I've declared an array, array A of size 3, that means that I have in the memory, I have declared I have declared three memory locations. The name of the first memory location is A0. The name of the second memory location is A1, and the name of the third memory location is A2. So we are going to access these memory locations using the subscript provided in the array. And in the first, in the second, sorry, in the third location, I have stored 55.5. So in this third location, I have stored 55.5. In the first location, I have stored 11.11. So you would assign the values to the array just like you would assign the values to any simple variable. There is absolutely no difference between that. I mean, if I have declared a variable integer a, b, c, and a equals to 10, and b equals to 20, and c equals to 30, I mean, exactly the same process is followed here whenever we are assigning the values to the individual elements or individual locations within that array. So to access those locations within that array, we have to use the subscript or the index number given within that square bracket. So the important thing or the main point to remember in this discussion is that whenever you are declaring an array, you are writing the size of that array. If that means that the array has three locations going from 0, 1, 2. Now, if you're assigning the values or if you're printing the values to the screen or whatever, then you are going to use the correct index number, and the correct index number will always go from 3, sorry, will always go from 0 to size minus 1. So A1 is assigned 33.3 over here. So if I just see out, so this is just a simple character strings. I mean, this thing is going to print the value of 11.11, and A1 has the value of 33.3, and A2 has the value of 55.5. So if I run this code, it says A0. I mean, this A0 and A1, A2 are, I've written it over here. I mean, this is nothing specific about the array, just to signify that the first location has 11.11, the second location has 33.33, and the second, sorry, and the third location has the value 55.55. So it's not necessary you have to give the values in order or anything. You can just store any value provided that the value we are storing is of the correct type. So if I have the double type array, so that means I can store double type numbers here. If I have an integer type array, I mean, I could have written int in place of double here, so that would have stored just the integer type numbers. Or I could have type written char, a character type array, which we are going to discuss in about 4 or 5 minutes. So I hope that makes sense. So these, I mean, this array has a size of 3, and the index number will go from 0 to 2. So that is important in our C or C++. So I mean, I could have done this. I mean, I could have a, and I could have done like a3 equals to, even though a3 is not a valid location, or I could have done 830. 830 is not the valid location because I've declared the value, or I've declared the size of the array as 3. So the valid index number goes from 0 to 2. But here, if I've done that, if I do that, let's try putting some value. Let's try putting 99.99 here and see if I can get some error. No error, absolutely no error at all. So if I mean, even though I have assigned the value to some memory space, so, in the computer memory, but it did not put up some error, even though that's a very big disaster actually. So if I copy this, and I'm going to even print the value. So if I print the value of 830, and we will see what we can get. Let's see if I can get some kind of an error. No, it did not give me an error, even though the size of the array was declared to be 3. But it is possible it might throw up an error. It is possible it might not throw up an error. If I just go really beyond, like in this kind of a location, I'm pretty certain that this operating system or Windows 7 is going to put up some error here. Let's try that. Look, array1 example.exe has stopped working. Windows can check online for a solution. That means that I have obviously um, accessed a memory location outside the sandbox or outside the memory space provided by the operating system to this program. So do not do that. It will definitely crash the program. So you need to watch out that whatever element, whatever size of the array you have declared, you have to remain within that uh, bound. So if the size of the array is 15, let's say you have declared an array of size 15, and let's say instead of double, you have declared an array of type integer. So obviously I cannot store these values with the fractional values here. That means that this array with the name a can store 15 integers, and the valid index will go from 0 to 14, that is 1 4, always size minus 1. Okay, even though I mean I've just demonstrated that you can access like 15th or 16th element or 15th or 16th memory location, but that is an error and you need to avoid that. Is sometimes it will cache the error, sometimes it will not cache the error. C or C++ language simply do not provide the inbuilt checks to catch those errors. Okay, so if I've declared an array of size 15, so each integer is of size 4 bytes. Okay, each integer is of size 4 bytes. So that means that I have declared in the memory location, in the memory, 1 2 3 4 5 all the way to from 0 to 14. So I have declared a memory structure of 60 bytes in the memory, because each location is of 4 bytes, and each location can store one integer, and each integer is of 4 bytes. So if I've declared an array of size 15, that means the index will go from 0 to 14. The first element would be a0, the second element would be a1, and the third element would be a2, and so on and so forth. I mean, even then this line would be illegal, so I should not be, and this line is obviously very very illegal, so I should not be writing this, because this is outside the bound of the index number in this array. This array has the valid index number going from 0 to 14. Okay, so the size of this array would be 60 bytes. So it's the simplest data structure which can store the values of the same type, and we can access these values using the index number, and these index numbers go on sequentially. So that means that whenever we are discussing arrays, we will think about loops, because in loops we can have a, I mean, we can go from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, it's a simple example. Let's take a simple example here. I've declared an integer of size 5. Then I've declared an array of a and size. Size is actually 5 here. So I've declared an array of size 5. So if you do not like this line, you can just write 5 here if you want to. Okay, so I mean, this is just declaring an array of size 5. The valid index will go from 0 to 4. So, but since I have written the code of with size and everything, I need to change that everything. So I'm not going to do that. So I see out the statement, enter 5 numbers, and then I will take the numbers just like you would take the numbers and assign them into variables, taking it from the user. So I have run the loop from 0 to I less than size. Size is 5, so I less than 5. So the loop will go from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this, the first input would be assigned to A0. The second input would be assigned to A1. The third input would be assigned to A2. The fourth input would be assigned to A3. And the fifth input would be assigned to A4. So I've run the loop to take the input from the user and assign those 5 numbers to the array named A. Then I have printed in forward order the whatever the user has typed in the numbers and stored that in A. And I mean, this is very simple. That's going from 0 to I less than size, which is 5. So the first A0 would be printed, then A1 would be printed, then A2 would be printed, then A3, and then A4 would be printed, because this I is going to change or iterate or change its value in each iteration of the loop. In the first iteration, the value of I would be 0, so the A0 would be printed. And then I plus plus would happen. Then in the second iteration, A1 would have been printed. Then in the third iteration, the A2 would have been printed, and A3 and A4 would have been printed. And when the value of I is 5, which is 5 less than size, is going to be false, so it's going to exit the loop. So I can also do that in reverse order. I can just start from A4 to A0 and go in the backwards fashion. So that means that A4 would be printed, then A3, then A2, then A1, then A0 would have been printed. So first, let's run this code again. Not again, sorry. Enter five numbers. I'm going to put like 11, 55, 77, and 22, and maybe 44. And it says, I mean, whatever the number. So the first number, A0, has the number 11. A1 has the number 55. A2 has the number 77. And A3 has the number 22, and A4 has the number 44. So in forward order, so whatever whatever order I have entered, so I have just see out this in within the for loop, and the for loop goes from 0 to 4. In reverse order, the for loop again runs, and it goes from 4 to 0, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and I'm printing the values of these array going from A4, A3, A2, and A1. Okay. Mudassir Mahmood says, sir, you mean except using multiple variables, we can use array? Bilkul, absolutely. Actually, arrays are the simplest data structure. Whenever you want to store multiple values of the same type, it's actually much better to use arrays instead of naming those variables separately. Because actually, um, इस सवाल का जवाब मैं देता हूँ. If we declare empty, then what would be the size of array? First, I'm going to answer that if you're using, uh, let's say you want to store multiple values, take the input from the user, but you're not so sure how many inputs the user is going to put in. So the best way to do that is declare an array and take the numbers from the user, running some kind of a loop, or so that I mean, you do not need to type enter value for A, enter value for B, enter value for C, and enter value for D, because that would have made the job really difficult. However, if you are using loops to take the input from the user and storing those numbers or storing those values in the array, then yes, it is actually much more easier to do, to store same type values taking in from the user. Also, if you are using arrays, you can use the loops for while or do while loops to go through those array, maybe print those values, multiply those numbers, or whatever operations you want to perform. Okay, next question from Mudassir is, if we declare an empty, what will be the size of the array? It depends on the type. Actually, it depends. Let me go back to this example. If you have not written, I mean, if you have written this, if you're not writing it anything, like, I mean, that would have just probably one element. It depends on what compiler you're using behind the scenes. Because if you are not declaring it, that will make it a vector actually. But vectors, we are not discussing vectors right now. But if you are not written the size here, it will pick the size from this list, saying that the size of this array is 3. um, your question is slightly technical. That will make it an vector, and vectors are actually resizable arrays depending on whatever, how many numbers you're storing there. Their size is declared there and then, and if you need to increase their size, it depends on what compiler is using. So the answer is quite different. Okay, so it's your last live lecture? नहीं भाई, अभी live lecture बाकी हैं बहुत सारे. Arrays, last topic. No, it's not. I think two more topics remain to go. I have not even. Okay. Oh, important thing. Look. एक मिनट सवाल अभी कोई ना पूछे. Don't ask any questions. I need to discuss important stuff. एक चीज ये है, this is important for your midterm, okay? Because this is two topics which I did not discuss, and they might be asked in your midterm, so pay attention. Okay, this I did not discuss, but in section A they were discussed. Okay, so first, pay attention here. I'm going to explain that in 1 or 2 minutes. um, there is a function of known as absolute value. It is defined in the C math header file. So if I've declared variable a equals to 10 and b equals to minus 20 as integer, so if I take the absolute value, so that is the modulus, that is the that will take the absolute value or just a magnitude of whatever is within that, within these round brackets. So if I run this code, so it will say that the absolute value of A is 10, which was already positive, and B was minus 20, but the ABS of B is 20. So if you're asked to perform, if you're asked to compute the absolute value, you will be required to use this ABS function, which is within that CMath header file. So I did not discuss that whenever I was discussing the CMath file. So pay attention and take a note of this thing. I'm going to upload this file in the class folder. Okay, another important thing is that if you are taking the input, if you are taking the input from the user, and that I mean, let's say you want to take the input. I mean, so far we have taken the characters, so far we have taken the numbers from the user, but we haven't taken the input as characters or multiple characters or string from the user. So for that, you need to declare the, you need to include the header file C string, which is known as, well, character string or null terminated byte string. Going to explain that in a moment, what we mean by that. Let's say I have declared an array of type character, and the name of that array is A1. I mean, you can just name the arrays as you would name some any other variable with the same naming conventions, and the size of that array is 80. So that means that the index number will go from 0 to 79. Okay, but I need to take the input from the user and store it in A1. Okay, so I cannot use simple cin and then write A1 there. The problem with normal cin object is that cin ends whenever the first white space is encountered. Okay, so if I write, I mean, let me run this code and explain it to you. It says enter your name. So if I write enter your name, if I write Muhammad and then I press space bar and then I press Umar. So this, if I have written this normal cn, that would have just taken Muhammad and that would have ignored whatever is written after the space bar, because cin ends its work whenever the first white space is encountered. So if you want to take the input from the user, and that user is going to type multiple characters, and those multiple characters have um, white space between that. I mean, the string. Let's say you want to write a name, or you want to write the class ID or email address or something like anything which has white space, or maybe no white space at all. So for that, if you are taking in multiple input, so you need to use something known as the Getline function. This is the member function of cn object, and this Getline function belongs to cn object or cn class, actually, the iStream class. And this Getline function, it assigns whatever is typed in by the user and assign this to whatever string you have assigned it, like whatever the user is typing, assigning it to A1, and then after comma I have written 80. That means that take 80 inputs, or if the enter key is pressed, just stop work there and there. Okay, so if I've written like 40 here, or if I've written like 30 here, the getLine function would have taken just 30 characters, including the white spaces, including the space bar. So if you are asked to take the input from the user as name, as your class ID or email address or whatever in your exam or whatever, so you need to use the cin.getLine. First, you need to declare an array of type character, and then use that array to store the input coming in from the user using the getLine function. Okay, so this is important. I'm going to upload that this file also in your class folder. So this is it. Okay, about the, if anybody wants to ask any questions, so please sir, अगर question में है कि write a statement of block, so we have to write this statement not complete program. Yes, exactly. If you are right to questions का statement पढ़ना, statement में if you are right to ask, if you are asked to write a program sorry about it. If you're asked to write a program, then you need to write include IOStream using namespace standard integer main word, ये पूरा लिखना है, ठीक है? You have to write these things. If you are asked to write a single statement to perform some task, then you have to write the single statement, and that's it. Okay, but I think you are asked to write program to do that in your midterm, so you need to write I mean actually it's actually simple to write the program, because you're going to type in using the keyboard. Okay, so I would suggest that before starting the test or whatever, you can just write the basic structure, that is using namespace standard, sorry, include IOStream, include C string, include CMath. I mean, you can include multiple files. There is no plenty for that in the exam. So, and write integer main void and return 0 um, in a separate notepad file. So you can just copy paste it from there to the Google Forms. And actually it's a better idea to write your write your responses in the Google form, or write your responses in notepad or wordpad, so that Allah na kare, if the Google form crashes, you have still your answers written in your notepad or word program, so you can straight away copy paste from there to uh, the exam answer forms. Okay, duration of midterm 2 hours. I think it's 2 hours. भाई वो पेपर पे लिखा होगा, मुझे exact नहीं पता, लेकिन I think it's 2 hours. Okay, so any more questions? अभी जाना नहीं है, अभी मुझे attendance लेनी है. So it's 91. Okay. If any more questions, you can ask in the chat window, or जिनको जाना है, I mean if anybody wants to leave, वो जा सकते हैं. Arrays last topic, नहीं बेटा, arrays not last topic. Last topic is pointers. Okay, so actually array, the name of the array is pointer. We are going to discuss that in the next class. हाँ, ये गूगल फॉर्म रीस्टार्ट हो जाता है और रीओपन. एग्जैक्टली, आई मीन दिस प्रॉब्लम हैज बीन फेस्ड बाय सो मेनी स्टूडेंट्स. सो आई वुड सजेस्ट यू राइट योर कितने क्वेश्चंस होंगे मिड में? आई थिंक 4 or 5 सिंपल क्वेश्चंस हैं. यू शुड बी एबल टू डू इट इन अबाउट 30 minutes, बट ड्यू टू द लोड शेडिंग प्रॉब्लम एंड द रेन प्रॉब्लम, यू आर गिवन फुल 2 hours. सो गूगल फॉर्म का क्रैश का मसला जो है, उसको अवॉइड करने के लिए बेस्ट वे टू डू दैट इज उसके लिए just write your answers in word or notepad as a backup. So खुदा ना खास्ता if Google Forms crash or restart or something freezes or whatever, तो फिर what type of question, ये मैं बता चुका हूँ यार. questions वही 4 तरह के आते हैं. I mean you are asked to write you're asked to make a program, or you're asked to guess the output of the program, क्या output उसका क्या होगा. You are asked to figure out if there is any syntax error, something like that. और ये जो अभी 2 बातें मैंने बताई है ना, गेट लाइन की और एब्सोल्यूट की, इसको अच्छी तरीके से देख लेना. अस्सलाम वालेकुम. मिस नहीं यार, यहाँ पे मिस कहाँ से आ गई? अच्छा, वी फेस लॉट्स ऑफ प्रॉब्लम्स इन मिड टर्म एग्जाम. वी फेस, क्या लिखा हुआ है ये? वन अदर प्रॉब्लम गूगल में रिफ्रेश. मैं यही कह रहा हूँ भाई, प्लीज मेक योर वट एवर आंसर्स यू आर टाइपिंग, first type in your word file or a notepad. Okay, So खुदा ना खास्ता, if Google Forms just crashes, you can just copy, restart the Google Form and copy paste all the answers there. It should not take you more than a minute to copy paste the answers. Okay. Dev C++ use कर सकते हैं program के लिए और formats नहीं, मेरा नहीं ख्याल. The invigilators are going to access your computer, so no, I mean you cannot use the compiler. You have to write the answer in Google Forms or in Notepad or Word file or whatever. But you need to access, you need to submit your answers with Google Forms. ठीक है. So let me take the attendance. ये भी सेव हो गया और ये भी सेव हो गया. ठीक है. अच्छा वी फेस. अच्छा डेफ सी, एक्चुअली सर वो एसएमएस में कॉपी किया था, डेट्स फाइन. अच्छा प्रोग्राम नहीं, प्रोग्राम बनाना है भाई, प्रोग्राम बनाना है. यू हैव टू राइट अ प्रोग्राम. जो आज पूरी कहानी बताइए वो क्या है. यू हैव टू राइट अ प्रोग्राम डूइंग समथिंग, यू नो, मतलब कोई कैलकुलेटर बनाने का है या इस तरह का जो भी डिस्कस हुआ था वो यू हैव टू राइट अ प्रोग्राम. वो मैं बता चुका हूँ. सर हैंड रिटन पीडीएफ फाइल अपलोड कर सकते हैं? नहीं, तो इसका ऑप्शन मेरा नहीं ख्याल है. यू हैव टू टाइप द यूजिंग कीबोर्ड, कंप्यूटर कीबोर्ड. हैंड रिटन पीडीएफ फाइल, यार ये सवाल अगर आप सर इकबाल से पूछ लो ज़्यादा अच्छा है. मेरा नहीं ख्याल. सर इकबाल के फोरम पे पोस्ट कर दो, लेकिन आई डोंट थिंक सो हैंड रिटन का ऑप्शन है कि नहीं है, इसका मुझे नहीं पता ऑनेस्टली. ठीक है सर, वी कैन राइट. नो, यू आर नॉट राइट टू, यू आर नॉट अलाउड टू यूज एनी कोड ब्लॉक और डेफ सी प्लस पे. फिर तो कुछ रहा ही नहीं ना फिर तो पेपर में. यू हैव टू राइट द प्रोग्राम विदाउट कंपाइलिंग इट. ओके. ऐसा नहीं है कि उठा के जल्दी से रंग करके देखा चल भी रहा है कि नहीं चल रहा हो फिर अपलोड कर दिया, ऐसा नहीं है. यू हैव टू राइट your program because it's an exam. And I mean, what would you do if you were in the university and attempting your paper? ठीक है. Can we write? नहीं भाई, नहीं नहीं नहीं, you cannot write the program in code blocks. You have to write your program in Google Forms or Notepad. No no no, to में dev C++ से प्रोग्राम बना सकते हैं. No no no, you have to write the code only. You do not need to compile it and run it. वो लैब का टेस्ट होगा. ठीक है. वो जो टेस्ट होगा जो आप ये कह रहे हो ना कि डेफ सी प्लस प्लस पे करके दिखा सकते हैं, नहीं, वो लैब पर होगा. ठीक है. वो लैब का जब भी टेस्ट होगा उसमें. अच्छा हाँ, वो यार एक दो और टेस्ट तुम लोग के ऑनलाइन आएंगे. वो जस्ट अटेम्प्ट दोस असाइनमेंट काइंड ऑफ अ टेस्ट. You would be given some timeline. You need to attempt those. They will be uploaded inshallah this week. So I will post that in the class folder. ठीक है भाई. इन्विजिलेटर करने दे तो कर लेना, लेकिन मेरा नहीं ख्याल इन्विजिलेटर करने देंगे इस तरह का. ठीक है. हैंड रिटन नहीं, मुझे नहीं पता. हैंड रिटन नहीं है, गूगल फॉर्म्स पर ही आपको टाइप करना है. इतना लंबा नहीं है, 5-5 लाइनों के आंसर्स हैं. अच्छा मिड्स का क्या करना होगा, थोड़ा आइडिया. यार पहले दे चुका हूँ मैं आइडिया, बेटा टाइम खत्म हो गया. मिड के लिए लेक्चर नंबर 1 से 15 और रिकॉर्डेड लेक्चर 1 से 15 और लाइव लेक्चर 1 से लेकर 5 तक है. उसमें प्रैक्टिस प्रॉब्लम्स वगैरह वो देख लेना. ठीक है. आई थिंक टाइम्स अप. इंशाल्लाह फिर बाद में मिलेंगे नेक्स्ट वीक. अल्लाह हाफिज. बाकी रिकॉर्डेड लेक्चर्स वो अपलोड अभी तक हो ही नहीं थे. सॉरी अबाउट इट. आई एम गोइंग टू अपलोड दैट recorded lectures by tomorrow. Okay, Allah Hafiz. जो मिड्स के टॉपिक में फाइनल में नहीं आएंगे? नहीं नहीं, आएंगे आएंगे, क्यों नहीं आएंगे. यस यस, यू कैन लीव और ज्वाइन द नेक्स्ट क्लास. अल्लाह हाफिज. ये क्या लिखा हुआ है, ईसा नेम वाला प्रोग्राम आपने स्टार्टिंग के प्रोग्राम से करवाया था मगर यूज एरेज के प्रोसीजर से नहीं था, सी एन गेटलाइन से था. सी एन गेटलाइन मैंने कभी ना क्लास में डिस्कस किया नहीं, आज कर लिया. ठीक है. उसको अच्छी तरह देख लेना. Yes, I will be sharing the live session in about 5 minutes, inshallah. जैसे ही वो Google Meet की वो खत्म होती है. अल्लाह हाफिज.